File transfers, what they mean for your saved games and mods. Speed, performance. Wait, where's the camera? And the FPS Boost versus good old-fashioned modding. We're talking about how all these things relate to this classic game, now on the Xbox Series X and S. Greetings! My name is Efrain and I like playing Skyrim on the Xbox with mods and telling you all about those mods in a video. Thanks for tuning in. I found myself in an extremely fortunate position when I was able to get my hands on the Xbox Series X, through a retail purchase of course, and was very excited to see how it fared when playing some of my favorite titles. But I know why you're all here, how's the Skyrim? If you are looking to procure yourself a new Xbox console and are looking to install this decade-old game to either play periodically whenever you get that Skyrim itch, or to try out some of the latest mods on the Bethesda catalog, there are some things you might want to know. Although this is primarily for players who have had a long history with this version of the game and its modding scene, some new players might also find it useful for the information when it comes to visual enhancements and overall performance in either a vanilla or modded playthrough. Okay, enough with all the words, you community college dropout sumbitch, I hear you say. What's this video going to be about? Two things. The first is a small bit about what you can expect when you migrate your data from one of the last generation Xboxes, the Xbox VCR, the One S, or the One X, what that means for your saved games, how to do it, and more importantly, what happens to your mods. The second part is all about visual performance, spotlighting two specific features, Microsoft's FPS Boost and the Uncap FPS Mod. I've taken an extensive look at what you can expect when using either feature for a modded playthrough. So let's get into it. This is Skyrim on the Xbox Series X and S consoles featuring the Uncap FPS mod by Smudgy5000. I'm sure you've heard there's absolutely no trouble when moving all your games over to a new console. Admittedly, that is true. All consoles have made that feature simple and effective due to cloud technology and advancements in their gaming network. You install the game onto the console, either digitally or disc, there is no difference in quality, sync your data with your Xbox Live profile, and then all your game progress should be there. However, in my personal experience, there were some things I wish I had done or tried to minimize setup time and mitigate valuable asset loss. Long story short, after installing Skyrim on the Series X, syncing data with my Xbox profile, and logging into my Bethesda account via the game mod feature, I was stunned to find my entire load order wiped clean. This was doubly alarming due to the fact that my saves were transferred from the older consoles, both vanilla and modded. I decided to make this video after the decision to factory reset my old Xbox One and opted to start completely from scratch. Meaning I can't show and prove everything I just said, so you'll just have to take my word for it and hopefully these dramatic reenactments will suffice. However, I didn't want to just leave it there, and I figured there had to be some way to transfer all your files from one machine to another. So, in theory, I thought you could copy the game and all its contents, including Skyrim's reserved space, where all your mods are housed, onto an external hard drive and attempt to install them onto another console. I did just that, and unfortunately, that is not possible. What I found is that although you can copy the actual game onto an external hard drive, you cannot copy all the files associated with that game onto the storage unit. Still, I copied the game file onto my hard drive in hopes that all the data would also be copied, and then I installed that data onto my friend's Xbox One X. The transfer from a Series console to a One wouldn't be a factor considering they both share the same OS and mechanics. Once the game was ready, I fetched my profile, synced the game, checked that my saves were transferred, and then went over to the mods section to find that load orders do not make the move over in any capacity. This sucks for more than just the previously mentioned reason. The way you can quickly install your games and fetch your profile from anywhere in the world using the Xbox network is great. Your games really do get to come with you. But what if you aren't able to access the internet and connect to the Xbox network due to a move, outage, or just be unlucky enough to be in an area with no internet access? You could lose dozens of hours invested in your favorite games, or some titles may just be unplayable because they rely on access to the internet to constantly check for updates. Even single player games, and that's just stupid. I won't go into this any further because we're getting way off topic and there's a lot more to talk about. Key takeaway, physical transfers should be more lenient for the sake of game preservation. So, now that we know you'll be starting your load order completely from scratch, I'd wholeheartedly recommend documenting your current load order and building it all via the favorites or library section on Bethesda's website. Because searching for mods on the Xbox is no bueno, es mierda. If you'd like some mod ideas or you'd like to copy my LO, I have a pastebin post that lists my current load order with all the Bethesda URLs. If you need additional help setting up mods, check out this video by me. However, if you do choose to use the mods on my pastebin post, they are not fully optimized for the best results and very outdated. I've dramatically changed my load order for this new generation of Xbox. Changes to that post will be made shortly after this video is published. This mod makeover for better results is brought to you by another document a viewer of mine brought to my attention. It's a spreadsheet made by a team of modders that details exactly how to install mods on the console version of Skyrim SE. It also contains a logical load order template broken up into sections with mod examples and definitions of each section on the side. The template will help you place your mods in the best way to avoid conflicts and boost performance, hopefully avoiding frequent crashes and glitches. I will also put the link to this document in the description below, and I recommend bookmarking it in your browser so you can quickly reference it when you find yourself asking, where do I stick this big titty anime follower mod? I've done my best to adhere to the template when restructuring my load order, as well as removing some mods and adding in others to save space. As I continue to experiment with mods for the Series X, that pastebin post will be updated and changed accordingly. Speaking of changes, let's talk all about what Bethesda and Microsoft have done to utilize the hardware of the Series S and X to effectively modernize this game. God, I'm such a nerd. What an awful segue. Take notes, everybody. This is how you make a terrible transition. For those of you who haven't heard, Team Xbox, who's fully committed to backwards compatibility, has released a feature for several older games that would boost frame rates without a significant hit to resolution. Most of these titles include Bethesda properties like Dishonored, Prey, Fallout 4, and Skyrim, of course. Skyrim is not only the one we are obviously going to be talking about today, but is an interesting title due to its behavior on different consoles. On the Xbox Series X, the game will run at 4K 60 frames per second. I am unable to show you or test this myself as I lack the hardware to play games in 4K or capture any video in that resolution. There are dozens of videos of all the games affected by the FPS Boost running at 4K on YouTube, and if you like, you can see how that looks. This video essentially simulates the experience of playing the game on the Xbox Series S, which cannot display most games in 4K but settles to a very comfortable 1080p 60 FPS. And when it comes to just playing base Skyrim with no mods and the FPS Boost enabled, it is great. Camera movement, character movement, and combat all look noticeably smoother and crisp. You will see a vast improvement in visual quality going from an Xbox One or PS4 to a Series console. It is by no means perfect, as you'll see some stutter and FPS drops in some instances, like when wandering the open world or when in combat with many moving parts, like say the first dragon encounter. It's not 100% perfect, but that's being far too critical. It's a very stable 60 frames per second experience all around, and after a couple hours of play, the performance drops aren't noticeable at all. As a matter of fact, they are quite minimal to begin with. What is noticeable in a good way are the load times. I'm sure if you've been looking into purchasing one of these consoles, you might have seen a review where the reviewer has said that the SSD, which stands for solid state dick, significantly cuts down on load times for getting to games faster. I have an SSD in my computer, I don't play many games on it, but from my experience, it is impressive. Not very revolutionary, but it is cool. I thought these reviewers were, as the kids say, being all types of scandalous about the performance of an SSD in a console. Trust me, they say that. And when I experienced it in person, holy shit! Gone are the days of loading screens, so I'm afraid you're going to have to say farewell to the on-screen trivia and tips. Whenever I loaded into a game or fast travel to another area on the Xbox One, I typically had enough time to check my email, pay my credit card bills, and craft a perfect old-fashioned cocktail in the time it took for the game to load. Now load times are almost non-existent. I start to look at my phone and I look up and realize, oh shit, I'm already back in the game. It's pretty neat. It doesn't at all mean that vanilla Skyrim is like a brand new game, as some would say. The performance it gets from the series consoles definitely modernizes it so it doesn't feel like a 10-year-old game. It still looks like a 10-year-old game because it's very outdated, but at its core it's still Skyrim. And Skyrim is good, but it can be better. So now that we have a control group of which to base our performance tests on, let's add some modifiers, like a lot of them. First, I wanted to see how the Uncap FPS mod by Smudgy5000 fared with over 3.5 gigabytes of mods, a large portion of which are heavy graphics mods. This mod debuted almost alongside the launch of the series console and was the first enhancement to allow Skyrim to run at 60 frames per second. If you are going to use this mod, it's recommended to disable FPS Boost by going into My Games and Apps, managing Skyrim, selecting compatibility, and simply unchecking the box next to FPS Boost. From what I've read online, there is no benefit and no problem to using both, but I'll let you know how that goes later. From my experience, it does exactly what it's meant to. The game runs at a good, higher frame rate in most instances. You will get performance hits like stutters, drops, and choppiness in some areas of the game, especially if you were using mods that add or alter trees, foliage, and grasses. Hell, the mod makers downright say that's going to happen in the description. Naturally, you'll see frame rate drops in Falkreath, on the roads of Riften, and some of the northern snowy forests. And because of the mods I used, the swamp area outside Morthal becomes a frame rate nightmare. Things get really choppy due to the water, plants, and occasional snow. Speaking of snow, frame rates also drop when encountering some particle effects like rain, snow, ash, fog, and fire embers, although these are much less severe. In towns and cities, frame rates are stable even in Riften, and that place was notorious for poopy performance on the Xbox One for some unknown fucking reason. Interior areas are very smooth, and you'll be hard pressed to find some indoor location that harms performance for more than just a couple of milliseconds. Combat maintains a steady frame rate even in the more impressive battles and events. For example, performance was steady during the Battle of Whiterun during the Civil War quest, and of course, the only major issues I got was when I looked over to some nearby trees and bushes. Same deal with the dragon encounters. Some users have reported screen tearing issues. I cannot in good faith tell you if this is true because I didn't experience it or I'm just really bad at seeing it. I can only theorize why these issues may be occurring. This can be attributed to the mod disabling VSync in favor of uncapping the frame rate of the game to 60. VSync, to put it simply, is a system in games that synchronizes the frame rate to the refresh rate of the monitor. If you have a severe problem, double check to make sure your Xbox is using the max refresh rate your monitor will allow. It's strongly recommended to turn on variable refresh rate if you can. Okay, quick note. I know by choosing to show this screen, I am admitting that my monitor only has a refresh rate of 50 Hz, so I can't truly play at or show 60 frames per second. Honestly, the frame rate was good enough. This was to showcase the improvement of the game from 30 to a higher frame rate. Secondly, there wasn't any egregious screen tearing that I could see, so my monitor was fine for running the game at about 50 to 60 frames. Does this invalidate my findings? No. But if it irks you so much, I'll be upgrading my equipment soon, and I can assure you, it'll be exactly the same experience. Alright. Now that we know how the game behaves via Uncap FPS, let's move over to the FPS Boost. I was more excited to test this feature out due to the novelty surrounding it and was skeptical that it would perform well with mods. I thought it'd be crap due to the FPS Boost being primarily used to up frame rates of base games without any foreign changes or additions like mods. And in my honest opinion, it looks and feels exactly like the Uncap FPS mod. I encountered the exact same problems as I did when running Uncap. Performance drops due to greenery, minimal to no changes in towns and cities, some hits with particle effects, nothing to note in dungeons or buildings, and combat is as smooth as butter. It was surprising. I did not see any significant problems or distinctions between the boost and the mod. If anything, the FPS boost for me felt slightly faster and smoother, possibly because of enabled VSync, but it's nothing that I'd say makes it more favorable to use due to it being entirely subjective and presumptive about VSync. At this moment, spring 2021, I can only say that you basically choose whichever you prefer for a modded playthrough. That seems to be the consensus right now for many players. It's all up in the air at the moment, and I can't say with confidence that one is better than the other. It truly comes down to personal preference, maybe the monitor or other equipment you're using. We'll have to wait until more people get their hands on a series console to test this out and come to a general verdict. Now, if you think I'm some sort of modding hack fraud, first of all, please don't. You can take a look at videos by Digital Foundry and Tech Ranger. I used their videos for researching this topic. They definitely provided some good information and insight for understanding the benefits of each modifier. Digital Foundry is more professional in their research, goes very in-depth with several Bethesda titles, and showcases different consoles including the PS5. Tech Ranger shows the quality of both the boost and the mod with a full load order on Skyrim and I believe Fallout 4 as well. Their videos are in the description below. I bring them up because they both found the game can achieve a stable 60 frames per second with either one, but again, neither came to a genuine consensus as to which is better. So there you go, pretty anticlimactic. You can basically choose whichever enhancement you find the best for your setup. There truly isn't any discernible difference, and they achieve the exact same quality. But no matter which one you choose, performance will ultimately be determined by your load order. If you're someone who really likes to load up a bunch of graphics mods that alter the overworld, you are going to experience lots of choppy gameplay when hiking in the great outdoors. You'll have to consider scaling back mods that alter or add in grass, trees, and water, or find mods that take out other unnecessary parts of the game, like this one, or this one. Although that will only allow a small boost. For the best performance, with mods enabled of course, your best bet is to do both of what I just recommended. Scale back graphics mods, especially ones that add in more volumetrics into the world, and run object removers. But if you'd like your game to continue looking like a Bob Ross painting with frame rate issues in several places, you can load up as many mods as you want. It'll be a tough call to make, beauty versus performance. Now, what about loading times? Well, once again, that is dependent on your load order. If you're using a lot of mods and go heavy-handed on the graphics mods, you can welcome back your friendly neighborhood loading screen. Loading times will increase when entering/exiting a city like Whiterun or fast traveling. This isn't as severe as the loading times you face when using an Xbox One, but nowhere near the speed you get from vanilla Skyrim on a series unit. Lastly, nothing exciting happens when you run both Uncap and FPS Boost at the same time. There was no smoke spewing out of my console, nor did my game turn into a turbo frame rate monster. For me, it felt like it was a bit choppier, but I couldn't honestly tell you that running both had an effect on the game. It's redundant to have both these enabled, so just pick one. Trust me, nothing gets better or worse from having them both on. You're essentially just turning off VSync with the mod and then presumably turning it back on via the Microsoft Boost. One more thing I wanted to quickly shove in here, because the series consoles use a feature called Quick Resume, which allows you to quickly jump back into games from console startup. It's pretty sweet. This can sometimes affect FPS as well. If you resume Skyrim using this feature and you either didn't exit out the game or you didn't completely shut down the console, no matter what FPS enhancer you use, you will occasionally experience extremely choppy gameplay. This isn't very common, but it's something to look out for and know how to fix. It's easily remedied by closing the game down and simply starting it up again. Skyrim also isn't on Microsoft's list of games getting the 120 FPS treatment on the series consoles, so nothing you do or install will change the frame cap. It's 60 frames, a good 60 frames too, you'll enjoy it. It's a fantasy game with a pretty world, not a goddamn competitive shooter, so no more need for more goddamn frames. At the end of the day, I'd still recommend installing the Uncap FPS mod for several reasons. It takes up no space in your load order, coming in at only several bytes, does the same thing that the FPS Boost does, and you could default to it if Microsoft or Bethesda does anything funny with their FPS boosted games down the road. The only caveat to this mod is if you do not have a monitor or TV with a refresh rate of 60Hz or over, you may run into some screen tearing issues. But while it's fresh and excellent, I'll be using FPS Boost to further test its capabilities and prefer it with the setup I currently have. Well, I'm just about done here. To summarize, if upgrading from an Xbox One to a Series console, document your current load order as it will most likely be cleared out and you'll have to start from scratch. The Uncap FPS mod and Microsoft's FPS Boost do the exact same thing. There is virtually no discernible difference in quality or performance. I recommend downloading the Uncap FPS mod to have as a default frames rate enhancer, in case the boost doesn't work for you for some reason. At the moment, you can choose whichever one strikes your fancy more. And finally, for the best performance results, consider scaling back graphics mods. If you just gotta have poppin' forests and don't care about frames, you can ignore this bit. I genuinely hope this was helpful for if and when you do get your hands on an Xbox Series console. These are very powerful machines for the price, with a lot to offer that are going to make many people very happy. It's a good time to be a gamer. Real good time. One final thing, if and when you do get your Series console and have an old Xbox One or PS4 unit that you are just going to put into storage, consider donating it to a children's hospital. Gamers Outreach will take your playable consoles and games in the form of hardware donations that is then distributed to children's hospitals where kids can have fun playing games while they recover. I'll be leaving their link in the description below if you'd like to donate or learn more about the organization. Well, that's it for me. Thanks for watching. My name is Efrain. Adios.